Oh, goodness. Hey, everybody, it's the Mental Health Warriors podcast, and today we are being joined by a full house. We've got Richard, the comeback coach, we've got Janet, we've got Nancy, and Garrett, and Adam, and myself, Ashly. And we are going to do a little intro, and then we're going to get into the show. There we go. Welcome back, everybody. So, what's going on today, Adam? What's our topic?
Right. Well, firstly, ladies and gentlemen, I'm not locked up. I may look like I am, but I'm not. I'm very much in my own home. So I've got these two trying to say something, but it's all right. I love them. Tonight, we're going to be discussing PTSD versus CPTSD through trauma. Now, I know Nancy did a live and a post about this earlier today, and I would love to know her experience when it comes to trauma, when it comes to this particular area.
Well, I'm on a plane right now, so I'm going to do my best. The timing of my life is always something that I've learned to accept. I think one of the biggest challenges of my life was trying to force my recovery, to force myself to get better, which led to a lot of shame around the trauma that I'd already lived in my life. Layers and layers and layers of trauma. I mean, everything from physical, emotional, financial, spiritual abuse, the loss of a child. It was just layers and layers and layers of, oh, it's not that bad. Everybody goes through something, to an understanding that what I was feeling was extreme. And that the more that I pretended to be normal, the less that I was able to be me. And it was through a lot of wonderful love and support that I was able to find people that would help me on my journey. And my journey was with so many interesting healing modalities. I mean, I would go and see shamanic healers. I would go and see people that specialized in Reiki. I would see counselors that specialized in different types of counseling that was other than psychology. It was understanding my thoughts, being able to regulate my emotions so that when something happened in my life, I wouldn't snap and lose control over, like, I mean, there's that, what's that saying? You don't cry over spilt milk. And because I was reacting in a way over small things that would either be a burst of anger or shaking uncontrollably while hiding it at the same time. And I remember when I went to see one counselor, and he was looking through my list of feelings and emotions, and he said to me, I don't see on here where you served. I don't understand, right? And he's like, well, you served overseas somewhere. Where did you serve? And I said, I never served overseas. And then I began to realize that what was happening to me was more of a reflection of being in a combative life. Like it was like having tours and tours and tours of being overseas. So overcoming it was just a day by day experience. Took probably about 12 years. We don't know until we know. And Janet was very, very helpful in helping me understand the experience through the eyes of a first responder. So I'll pass it on to you as we're beginning to disembark the plane.
Ashly?
I have to unmute myself. I like how you said that, Nancy, as far as like we just don't know until we know. I feel like a little bit, and I've shared this before on an earlier episode of the podcast, but just like my experience with some of those PTSD symptoms came after a traumatic illness and after a traumatic event, if you will, that was that near-death experience. And even the recovery period during that was difficult for me. It was difficult for me to wrap my head around the expectations of other people that I placed on them. It was hard for me to wrap my brain around like things that had happened in our marriage and just the whole coming back to reality after a near death experience like that, where this is life. Like, how do I reincorporate life but differently, where I pay attention to the priorities, the things that matter, like my kids and my relationships, and not let the little things make me explode into a rageful, burned out person because the expectations weren't met, if that makes sense. But for me, I had to turn to my faith and a friend within the church at that time to help me wrap my brain around some of the things that were happening and almost give me like a faith-based reality check, if you will. And just remembering that my value doesn't come from my spouse, it doesn't come from my kids, it doesn't come from anybody around me. But then it also shifted the perspective of now I have to start taking better care of myself. And what does that look like going forward? But I can remember the days of just sitting on my couch and just crying and not understanding like what is going on right now. This is not feeling like myself because I'm just an emotional mess. And there are times that even now we're coming up on the 6-year anniversary of that happening, and there's even times that I spend time reflecting on where I was to where I am now. So
Richard?
I'm just grateful to be here with you legends. I'm so grateful to be here. I'm a different kind of dude. And Nancy has me on the show. You've had me on the show. And my whole life got turned around by one conversation with a gentleman named Mr. Ed Milet. You might know Ed. And I've come back from drug addiction, alcoholism, homelessness, PTSD, blindness. And the one thing out of that whole conversation that transformed me from today, I decide from having post-traumatic stress to post-traumatic growth, Ed told me, Rich, nothing has ever happened to you. Everything has happened for you. And everything is a teachable moment. Your mess has now become your message. And from that moment on, my whole life has changed. So I might be a little bit different than most people. I talk more about the post-traumatic growth than I talk about the post-traumatic stress disorder. So wherever you guys want to go, whatever you want to talk about, I'm just grateful to be in the room with these legends.
Legends and me.
And he is on house arrest, guys. He didn't say that, but he's on house arrest. Just saying.
So here we go. Right, well, we've got two newcomers, so I want to kickstart with Garrett. Thanks for being here. Hope you're well. What's your view? What's your experience when it comes to these two topics?
Yeah, so thanks very much for having me. I'm grateful to be here, and I love having conversations about this or mental health or addiction in general, just because I think that's the best way that we can break the stigma and overcome it. The more we can normalize conversations about the human experience and ways that suffering and struggling shows up, the more permission we give to other individuals to investigate that or find the tools and resources in their own life. So for that, thank you so much for the messages that you put out there and for this work that you're doing. I understand trauma, and let me first say I'm not a clinician. This isn't a PhD definition. This isn't the Webster's definition. But my basic understanding of what trauma is, as it shows up in our life, it's a experience or an event that happens that creates a fundamental change in our values, beliefs, or understanding of the world or our place in it. So, for example, if somebody is in a car accident and it's a horrific experience, and maybe they lose a loved one that was next to them. Their entire life up until that point, they lived in a world where generally you could get in a car, you could drive around, you could travel, and you don't have to worry about, in an instance, a horrific experience happening. Where somebody who was the victim of an assault at some, their life and their perspective up until that point was, you can generally trust those people that are around you. You can generally feel safe in your environment and where you go. And then after this event or this circumstance happens, they now live in a world where a fundamental value or belief or understanding has been shattered. And I believe, or my experience is, the trauma comes from the inability to reconcile this world that I once lived in to this new world that I'm living in. And that can cause that's where these feelings of shame come from if we're responding or reacting in a way that's not familiar to us, because now we're trying to find our way in this new environment, this new world, this new life experience. And if we're not showing up the way that we think that we should, or the way that we're expected to, then that can create feelings of shame that we're not showing up the way that we want to. And it can create more isolation and kind of be a compounding situation as we're experiencing this, the shame, the confusion with how we're responding to things now that maybe we responded differently in the past. And I think, and as that plays out, it can just kind of continue to compound. So one thing I didn't mention, and this comes back to Richard's points, my understanding of a traumatic experience, one that makes a fundamental change in your values, beliefs, or understanding, it's not necessarily a good thing or a bad thing. That, contextually, I'm not saying that it's good or bad. And it's really the way that somebody processes it or the results that they have as in the aftermath that defines whether it's a good or a bad thing. We look at post-traumatic growth. It's still something that occurs or happens, a growth or a positive change that happens after a traumatic experience or event, but it's a fundamental change of values, beliefs, and understanding that creates a net good impact in somebody's life. Whereas, instead of the negative symptoms of it that people deal with. And one of the things that I found generally is that it's unfortunate, speaking with a lot of people in the field. So I present a lot of addiction recovery conferences, and I talk with mental health professionals. And a lot of times when I bring up the term post-traumatic growth, I'll say, hey, let me see a show of hands. How many people are familiar with post-traumatic growth? And unfortunately, not every hand goes up. So we have these clinicians and these professionals that are working with people, trying to help them deal with the effects of their traumatic experiences. And they don't even realize that there's another side to the same coin, that a traumatic experience can also be the catalyst for positive change or positive growth.
Absolutely. And that's why I've learned that it's not always a mental health breakdown, but it's a mental health breakthrough.
Mm.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I recently learned that myself. So yeah. So thanks for all you're doing. And Janet, welcome.
I had to find where to press it. So, I'm great. Thanks for the messages and reminding me that I'm on here today. I was on another call and whoops, I better jump off. But like Richard and Garrett here, both made good points, and the growth is there. The thing is we're not taught there is growth. And it's that awareness. And that's what led me to do what I do. I'm retired from the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, where I was an emergency police dispatcher, diagnosed with PTSD in 2003 before anybody was even talking about police officers, or never mind dispatchers, ever having experienced that. But the result came, and Garrett talked about a car accident. We were in a bad car accident, but it was the fourth time in 10 years. And I had physical illnesses and breakdowns and stuff. And there's that book, What Your Body Keeps Score. And what I try and tell people is that, you know what, recognize and look at what your body is going through. Because when I was going through a bad place and finally went and saw a psychologist when I found a good one, because they're not all the ones you need to work with, is that she diagnosed me with PTSD for my job. And I said, you know, I thought everything was car accident, but it was her. And I have to say, there are some amazing ones out there, but if you do not feel comfortable with them, please do not work with them. I had one that I would never pay anybody to go to see her. So we have to recognize, and unfortunately, we have to do it or talk to people outside sometimes, because when, like all of us here, there's something happened to take us to that place. And I know that in the notes it was complex PTSD or PTSD. It's now more commonly called PTSI, right? Injury. I really don't understand the complex one. And so my incident never happened from one thing. It was a buildup of all of these calls that I took that I buried inside me. And it took after that car accident for me to sit in my you-know-what, because I couldn't physically be busy and keep all that down. And it all bubbled up, and it was like, what's happening to me? Because as I was raising grandchildren, I was working full-time as a dispatcher, I was doing all of these things, busy. But when you stop and you're not, then everything explodes, and you have no ability to push it back down. And that's my experience, and that led me to what I do now. And when my psychologist, and I, like I said, I had a fabulous one, and she worked with me. We worked for 6 months, and she did amazing things, gave me amazing tools. And then she said, you don't have to work with me anymore. And I go, oh, now what? Because this person has carried me and helped me and worked with me. I'm a new person. Where do I go now? Who am I now that I have worked through that trauma that she helped me with? Because like any change in our life, we are a different person. So we have to rebuild that part of us. And that's where I see people not recovering and going to post-traumatic growth, is that they're not continuing that movement. And Garrett knows that I did, and I'm sure he did, lots of different trainings. And that's how we met in one of those trainings, is that I had to keep moving forward, because I knew if I didn't keep moving forward and learning new tools, I would slip back into that dark place. And that's why we have to surround ourselves with people like you guys that are talking about, look, it's possible. It's possible to move away from that darkness. It's possible to, put boundaries around ourselves to keep us safe. But that doesn't mean that we can't have a life. And one of the things that I found was that I had lost after the trip. I didn't even know I had quit laughing. I wasn't even having fun anymore. I didn't know that until after I started the treatment. So, it's now, you guys, I take every chance I can to have fun and try and help other people recognize, you know what, we can be childlike. I'll go for a walk and swing on a swing. We have that ability to recreate our lives and surround ourselves with people that support. And that's why programs like this, Adam and Ashly and Richard, are so important.
Yeah. This is why my partner won't take me into a toy shop around Christmas. She won't. You just have to, don't you? You have to.
Yes, you're the one, Adam, that winds every toy up and walks away, and then all of them are clanging around.
You know what? I'm going to tell you. I'm just going to go off topic briefly about this. It was our eldest's first birthday. It was coming up to his first birthday, and we went to the Toys R Us, and it was a big Toys R Us. And this was when I was getting on with Kerry's parents. Well, you said that, but anyway, obviously, Kerry, her mum, and Lucas, who was literally strolling around, he was literally anything he touched, he got. I think we spent over £500 that day just on toys, what he wanted. And there were 15 aisles, 15, and they finished what they were doing. They were at the till and all that, and they actually rang saying, "Where are you and my dad?" And that's what Kerry said to me. I'm like, "Oh, we're just on aisle 3." I'm just on aisle 3, pressing all the try me buttons. You just have to, don't you? You just have to do it. Sense of humour. What do you expect?
Well, you got to be silly. Silly once in a while.
You have to.
Okay. Yeah,
you have to.
Okay. Well, I think that for adults, it's almost like that permission has been given away, taken away to enjoy your life. Take those magic moments. Like one of the most memorable moment about my husband and I is that the kids were away and we had just moved to a new location, transferred, and we went to a movie and we came out of the movie and I said, "Oh, that one looks good." He says, "Okay, let's go." And we went into the other movie. Like some people would say, you can't do 2 movies at once. Well, why not?
Exactly.
What's wrong with that?
Exactly, and that's it. Well, it brings me to a question, and it's really, really it's been eating me to say it, and I want to know this. Now, we've all experienced some sort of trauma in our life. It doesn't matter what it is, but I want to know, what is the difference? So obviously, I already know what the difference between PTSD and CPTSD is. I already know that. But what is the difference between someone that, for example, is being traumatized through substance abuse or alcohol misuse compared to like a child falling off a bike? Because that can be traumatizing as well.
I'll chime in here if I can. I think it comes to a deviation from our natural state or our authentic self. I mean, whatever vocabulary you want to use, but something that we experience that takes us more away from who we truly are. So if it's that child that was free will and loving and just, adventurous, and then all of a sudden they experience something that created fear, and now there's fear standing between them and something that they want to do, that can be an experience. Or somebody who's dealing with long-term substance use disorder and they're continuing to numb and continuing to hide a part of themselves. So I think whether somebody experienced trauma or not before they started engaging with substances, the lifestyle of somebody in active addiction itself is traumatic. And I think that's because we continue to, there's the shame that bubbles up. There's things that we're trying to hide. There's things that continue to separate us from that natural state of that person that we naturally are inside.
Absolutely. Yeah, I totally agree. And because obviously, for people that don't know me, I'm in recovery myself from alcohol addiction. Obviously, yeah, fair enough. I'm celebrating 5 months sober today, which I think is fucking awesome. But and I'm glad you mentioned it, Garrett, because all my life I lived in fear, and part of me still does. Fear of like judgment, or fear of staying confident in case I relapse, because there's always that risk.
Yeah. I have something when I can. I listened to a podcast, and actually that he was just speaker on the one I came over from, and he said something really profound that, and it was profound to me. It might not be to somebody else, but he says there is no addiction without trauma.
Yeah, I agree.
So childhood and bike and that, it's like my daughter was a horseback rider, and they'd fall off or she got injured, and it wasn't me going, and I think it's part of my background. I don't panic because that's my training, right? So I go over and I say, you'll do anything for attention. Now, if I was all over her and crying and upset, that gives her a different impact, like a blueprint for her. But it just gives us that, it's okay. You can get up. I'm here for you. And I think that we have to learn more about that. I try anyways not to do that, but it's even as a young mother, I did what I learned to do. And, some stuff is more moral trauma, right? When you say, Garrett, like there is so much moral trauma, like you're a bad person because you did that. So that, when you don't realize you've done something wrong, but you've already been told you're bad about it, that imprints on you and is hard to release.
Yeah, absolutely. What do you think, Nancy? Because I know you're literally traveling wherever you're going.
I think that what I just proved, getting from the plane to here, I bought cookies on the way because I saw Cookies by George, and there was a Minnie Mouse lunchbox that caught my attention, and I bought it. So I bought it for my granddaughter and me. She's only 4 months, so it's mine for a while. And it simply says, "This girl can." Right? And like it's those things that we do, like Janet said, to celebrate the day. Not the day that we made it through, but the day that is just such a blessing. Like every day is a blessing, and being able to come from a place where you would open up my eyes and be like, great.
And that's what I do. Because
I would open up my eyes and curse.
That's what I do. That's what I do, because every day I wake up and every day is a victory for me because I'm not picking up a drink. That's a victory to me.
Well, it's about understanding where your mindset is, without being in a space that, like for me, I used to wake up and not want to be here. Yes. I would wake up in a space and wish that I was on the other side where my daughter was, while knowing that I wanted to be here for my sons. So I think that's where the complex comes in. It's that torn between wanting to be here for the children who are alive and wanting to be somewhere else for the child that is not here, while living in a battered relationship with a man who I don't want to be with. So if that can explain to anybody what complex is, for me, yeah. And here I am in the wind.
So,
yay, it's cold in
so
Edmonton.
basically,
what the heck, Janet? It was blue when I flew.
So is this complex then? Is this complex for me because there's been days, obviously I don't feel that anymore, but there's been days when I've wanted to end it. I've wanted to commit suicide. I've even attempted it because I wanted to end the pain, end the fear, and I felt useless and unloved and unsupported. But at the same time, I'm thinking, well, there's kids there. If I go, what pain would that cause them? That'd be complex, won't it?
I think the complex, what they're looking at is the different traumas that happen. If you take different stages in your life, and I don't know, Garrett, you might know, I'm not a therapist either, by the way. And it's just different things like, okay, you can have a complex, so you have a car accident or somebody passes away and it's like all these different things are piled on top. And for me, I didn't consider myself complex but some people would, because it was never one incident that caused me to go to that place. I could never pinpoint one incident. There were a bunch of incidents that would come back. And yes, it's very cold in Edmonton. I want it to go away.
Yeah, I think one of the things that compounds and makes things that complex is when you experience a traumatic experience or a traumatic event, and you never get a chance to come back to your baseline or your new baseline before you're exposed to the next traumatic experience. So it's just a constant, and it keeps you in that prolonged fight or flight state to the point where you just get confused and you get disassociated, and you can never find out who the new you is after that trauma because the next one comes too quickly.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah.
You bring a big thing up, Garrett, is the disconnection, the disassociation. I didn't know I did that. I did that all the time when I was at work. And the other thing I did is I stopped breathing. If I was on an emergency call, I would hold my breath because I was afraid I wouldn't hear them properly. And these are things that is never talked about. But the disassociation, we can't do some of the things we do without disassociating. And then if you do it long enough, you don't even realize you're just, much like you said, I think it was Rich or Adam, you said, or even Ashly, I don't remember. One of you said that you just didn't seem to be right there. You were, couldn't connect. And that's so part of that. Mental illness, if we're disconnected, how can we work on ourselves and get reconnected?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Ashly, you're quiet for once.
I'm just listening. I don't have to have an answer for everything, right?
I love having banter with you. It's freaking awesome.
I tell my kid that all the time. You don't have to have an answer for everything. So I'm just absorbing. I'm listening. Stop picking on me, Adam.
Well, I think a big part of what happens is that we vacillate between experiences. So when I was where I was before I came here was in Abbotsford, and before Abbotsford I was in Chilliwack. So I had gone as a support to a celebration of life with a beautiful family who I had not seen for over 40 years. So the me that they knew was like this cute little 4, 5, 6, 7, 8-year-old child who was now coming as a support in love, now as an end of life doula, now as an author, now as this person who is so much different than the child I was, or the adolescent who was an addict. The layers and levels of what I am now. So, like Janet was saying, I'm not a therapist. I'm a woman who has experienced many things and recovered on many levels. I have experienced. So I think it's a constant unfolding, evolving, and learning to be a better listener. tremendously being a better listener so that I can hear and then ask questions so that I can clarify what I heard, ask if there is anything I can do to support. How can I support you? Because sometimes when we get that freeze, when we're going through trauma, we don't know. There's no word. Like when your suitcase is, your suitcase fell down and your baby bag fell down and you just don't know how to get on to the bus. Because you can't say in those moments of distress what it is that you need because you don't know. Like there's that young mom who's so burnt out and so tired, and she goes to pay for her groceries and the transaction doesn't go through. How can you help in that moment? How about pay for her groceries? Like this isn't rocket science, ladies and gentlemen. This is uncommon, spirits like uncommon, uncommon kindness. It's more than that pay it forward pretty #movie. This is like step out of your comfort zone and offer a stranger a ride. That's what I see. Again, I'm not normal.
Yeah, and that's exactly what happens when I go to the meetings every Wednesday night. Somebody actually comes and picks me up, takes me to the meeting, and then brings me back. And I think that's, even though I don't know them that much, I only know them through the meetings, it's freaking awesome. Because that's an act of kindness.
And I think so much help and so much permission to heal can just come. I love how we're all having this conversation, not from a clinical perspective, but from a real world, a lived perspective.
Yeah.
Because sometimes the most beneficial thing you can do for somebody is just be there with them, so they feel seen and heard and understood and supported. And when you've been through an experience that's similar, then you can oftentimes communicate a lot without having to say a word. Just having somebody around and they get that they're being seen, they get that they're being felt. And there doesn't need to be a conversation that takes place to provide that support and that permission to heal.
And I think a lot of times, like you said, Garrett, just being there. But a lot of times I heard recently from one of my pastors during a women's retreat, she said a lot of times we don't want to be in somebody else's uncomfortable because it makes us uncomfortable. So we don't know how to be in those moments with people when they're uncomfortable. But it's just being present and just offering like that touch. Or, especially if they've lost a loved one in a traumatic accident, just letting them cry, letting them scream, letting them do what they need to do to release what they have to release. And you don't have to do anything. You don't have to say anything because you're just there. So that makes a huge difference. But I think too, like when we all go through something in a traumatic state or through a specific situation, if the people that are closest to us or people that know us within our circle, they haven't necessarily gone through it, or we attempt to talk to them, sometimes I think they view us as that broken person yet, even when we've moved forward or we've moved beyond that. But they have us in their lens of, well, you're that snotty teenager, and you like, they just view us as the old us versus the new us. And that makes it difficult for us sometimes to continue moving forward in either that particular relationship, or it almost re-triggers us into, well, if they view me that way, maybe I still am. Maybe I haven't come as far as what I thought I did.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because for people that know about Alcoholics Anonymous, they've got the 12-step program, and I'm currently doing step 4, which is you basically writing a list of everyone that you've done wrong or they've done you wrong. So it's that list of resentment, and you're listing why you resent them. And I've actually named a few people who I really resent. But what I'm going to do is, when I get to a further step, I'm actually going to reach out to these people and apologize for doing them wrong. And then I'm going to leave it up to them whether they want to forgive me or whether they want to walk away. Because at the end of the day, whatever happens, I've done my part. And to me, now it's just water under the bridge. They can take it or leave it. That's up to them. But that's the whole point of recovery.
Adam, can I make a suggestion?
Yes.
Okay, so, and this is coming from somebody I gave a talk at, and she came back and gave me feedback. I've got a sheet that I hand out, and it's a gratitude sheet. And it's a thank you. You take cards. It's a 31 days, and you get 31 cards. You write on it what you're grateful for, to who you're grateful for, and then you tick off. And you handwrite them and you mail them. And what she did, she thanked them because she had been an alcoholic, and she said there was so many things. She was mad at people, or they were mad at her, and stuff. So she came to it and she wrote it. Thank you for the lesson. I've grown from this and where I am now. So thank you, because I may not have got there. However, whatever words come to you. But it wasn't from being a wrong place. It's just I was going through this, or however it comes. But she sent me a message. She says, John, I just went and got 30 cards and I just started writing. She says, unbelievable the messages she got back from people that she thought were mad at her or had done something, she thought they'd done something wrong, that didn't even remember what had happened, and they just gone on with their lives, whereas we hang on to it. So anyways, that's a suggestion. If you ever want a copy of that sheet, I can give it to you. But it's something that I like, and it's just that gratitude, right? Just that switch from being complaining to switching to being grateful. Like you said, when you open your eyes in the morning, you're happy to be here, but that wasn't always the case, right? Mm-hmm. So anyways, just
no, thanks for that. I'm open to anything. I really am. Yeah. Anything else?
I love the aspect you talked about, really through this healing journey, you're giving yourself permission to be a human, permission to be somebody who's made mistakes, and and freeing yourself of carrying that personal resentment or judgment that you didn't right or wrong, or that you didn't try to, heal something or bring something to a close. Because there's so many things. I mean, I've carried so many things in my life where it's something that I've done in the past. There's nothing I can do to change it, but it's like I don't close that tab, that window on the computer. I don't close that tab, and it continues to take some of my conscious space or be an awareness that affects me in ways that I may or may not be fully
absolutely
familiar with.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And and I love that because I got 35 years in recovery, and if you robbed my old house, I don't give a shit because I don't live there anymore. You could steal my old car, and it doesn't matter to me because I don't live there anymore. Yeah, I used to eat out of garbage cans, but now I eat filet mignon and lobster when I go out. I'm not that same guy. So yes, I may ask you for forgiveness for things I've done. But if you don't forgive me, that's okay too, because I'm not that guy anymore. And a lot
of people, and it's water under the bridge, isn't it?
And there's so many people that are so concerned about, well, what do people think about me? I really don't care what people think about me, but I care what people think about me. So I think that's something a lot of people, they go, especially during the holidays, Christmas, they call it the hurricane season when people are getting sober, because we're around everybody that knows the old Richard. The old Richard's dead. I'm not there anymore. I'm not that guy. And once you realize you're not that guy or girl, eventually once you've had enough time under your belt, people are going to start calling you, be like, "Hey, Rich, can you help my daughter? Can you help my son going through this?" So eventually, you're going to become a beacon of light. Because even though you're the black sheep of the family, and unfortunately, time takes time, especially in recovery. So you got 5 months. Yeah. That's awesome, but just for this 24 hours, that's all we can do.
Absolutely, yeah. One day at a time. That's all it is. One day at a time. But the thing is, though, what's keeping me going is my partner's words. They're stuck there. Because I admit, I'm holding my hands up, and this is how powerless I was. I've been with my partner on and off now for over 15 years. And all them years, I saw alcohol as my partner, not her. And that hurt her. And when I was drinking, I didn't give a shit who I hurt. I didn't give a shit. But now I do. Now it's coming to me of why I'm doing it. And that's why I'm writing these lists. And what sticks to me is the fact that she actually said, if you pick up another drink again, I'm not going to say anything. I'm going to wait until you pass out. And then I'm going to pack my bags, pack the kids' bags, and leave and block you on all social media. And that's it. I've lost them. And that's stuck with me. And that's why I'm staying sober. Because this is my last chance. Yeah.
I think both of those comments together are the impression that matters the most is the impression that we have of ourselves. Richard, you kind of talked about this. Yeah, somebody else's opinion of me. Okay, that should concern me a little bit, but it doesn't concern me as much as how I feel about myself. Because if I have if I have a positive self-esteem or a positive estimate of myself, then I'm going to hold myself to a certain standard, and I'm not going to allow certain things to hurt me. And Adam, as you start that journey in recovery, maybe it is an external motivation at some point, but as you continue to progress and feel more worth of your own, then that internal motivation can switch back to, you know what, I love Adam so much that it's not worth reaching for that drink or doing that thing. Because
absolutely, yeah. Because obviously I'm 5 months into it. I'm into my coming up 9th week of going to these meetings now. I've got a sponsor. I got a sponsor within my first month of recovery, and I just keep going one day at a time, and that's all it is. Yeah. And I asked my partner, how can I support you? Straight away, don't pick up a drink. And I'm like, okay, that's it. Is it easy? No. Are the urges there? Yeah. But I just keep going. But now I've got in that routine that if I get triggered, I either walk out the store or I repeat step 1 in my head. And that gets me through it.
Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah, where you got? Oh, Glenn's here. Hi, Glenn.
Hello, how are you?
I'm fine. How are you?
Well, doing pretty well, I think. I'm hoping I'm on time because I had 2 written down.
Yes, we're literally 49 minutes into the show.
Oh, okay. I apologize.
Hey, no, it's all right. It's all right. We're always mixing up with time differences. The shit.
It's time zones. And Glenn, I know Glenn too from the power of our story. Yeah.
So I've organised a reunion here, then, haven't I?
Yes, you have.
So, Glenn, give us a little bit of an insight on what you think about PTSD and CPTSD.
I think it's definitely there and it has effects on our behavior, but the resulting behaviors aren't our choices. So we've got to work through the PTSD issue so it doesn't influence our behavior. I'm big into self-accountability. And so there are things. I look at the choices I made, and there were some pretty bad choices in there, but I made them. I think that things can be worked through, and it doesn't always have to take medication or even the typical Western medicine treatments that they have. There are other things that also help out that I've kind of discovered, more holistic type things also. And so I kind of do a mix of Western and holistic. And that's rough, that in a nutshell for me.
Awesome. Go on, Ashly. I know you want to say something.
Why do you always assume that I have something to say?
Because you look intrigued.
Well, I mean, I like listening to stories that come in, and I take my little notes and I go about it. So so tell me, Glenn, what kind of holistic treatments do you use? Because I'm all about like holistic versus Western medicine just in general, but I do understand that there are moments where, you know, medications are necessary. So what do you do as far as that holistic piece? What are you shaking your head for? That holistic piece when you have something that triggers you or to cope with something that happens.
One of my favorites is, have you heard of Tibetan bowls or singing bowls? They're bowls that are made in Tibet by monks, and they rub with a stick and make a humming vibration and tone. And when I do those, that's one of my favorites. I do it a couple times a year just because it puts me in a trance at times. And I've had some awesome visions or dreams or whatever you want to call them from it. And that gives me a great calming thing. For me, the last time I actually was having nightmares and all kinds of things 4, 5, 6 times a month. And when I started going through things, and now I was down to 1 or 2 times a year, 3 times a year, maybe. And I got triggered when I was at an airport in Denver that was in November. Time flies. And I got out of there and I was wandering the airport. I've been there many, many times, and I was wandering the airport lost. I was, when I got down to the baggage carousel, everybody was gone except my wife and our luggage. So I wandered the airport in an area, one that I know well, probably for an hour. I don't know, because I lost time. Everything was gray and I couldn't figure out where I was at all. And to get through that one, 4 nights in a row was rough. And that's when my wife finally realized that, yeah, I wasn't messing around. Something was wrong. And for that one, I went up to Winter Park, Colorado. We were in Colorado, obviously. I went up to Winter Park, and I got out in nature. And once I parked in Winter Park, I didn't drive again for 3 days that I was up there. I walked the town. I walked up on the mountains. I got out in nature, and that's a big healer for me. And then that also gave me physical activity, which is huge for me also. And between the two, then after that, I didn't have any more nightmares. And I haven't had one actually since now, which I'm thinking about it. That's amazing to me. But that's how I got through that one. I have gone in for a session with the bowl, and that helps keep me calm. And so that's kind of what I did on those. And the last incident anyway.
Well, I know Garrett's just posted something in the chat. Do you want to share it, Garrett?
Yeah, certainly. For one, Glenn, I love the sound bowls. I run an addiction recovery residence, and we've got 8 guys in the house, and I'm trying to encourage one of my guys to go get certified to do a sound bath so that we can start holding them in the house. But what I had, I do have a resource, and I'm more than happy to offer that free to any of your listeners or anybody that's interested. It's called A Warrior Reset. And it talks about some of these self-care practices and things that we can do. But really, it's a combination of 4 different daily practices that I encourage people to do for at least 10 days. And altogether, it takes less than 15 minutes to do all 4 of them. And it looks at some different things from, our self-esteem, getting our confidence, our self-worth back, some empowered journaling, and a couple of physiological practices. One is diaphragmatic breathing. So just a very simple and basic kind of breath technique that we can use to reset our central nervous system and quiet that monkey mind sometimes. And then one of my favorite things, and I don't know, people either love it or they hate it, but cold exposure. I usually do it just in a cold shower in the morning to help kind of reset that central nervous system. But for anybody that's interested, you can go there and check that out, the warriorreset.com. And there's a place where you can get a free download for that program if you'd like to try it out.
Yeah. Awesome.
So
I don't know where to go from here.
Well, I can say my big thing about working through trauma is communication.
Yes.
And that's what I preach. That's probably the number one thing, because if you don't get it out, it's going to eat you alive. And so and in my career, back when I was working, if we shared stuff, we would be found unfit for duty and let go. And so we didn't share and we didn't talk. And I think that's what really created my first issues, was having it all bottled up for 20 years. And then, and that's where all the nightmares and stuff started. And so, communication is the biggest thing. That's like, I'm lucky now. My wife now, I got another chance, thank goodness, because I blew it twice, because I did not change. But when I changed me, I found a wonderful lady, and now she knows everything. We have no secrets whatsoever. And
obviously, before you came on, I was just saying the same, because obviously I've been with my partner for over 15 years now, and obviously I'm a recovering alcoholic, and I saw alcohol as my partner, not her, and I used to hate her so much, and I didn't give a shit. But now I'm learning from that, and now I'm 5 months sober.
Congratulations.
All right, I'm going to put on my interviewer hat, podcast interviewer hat, and I want to ask this to the group, because I find it's very interesting. We have veterans, we have first responders here. Why do you think that the average male in the United States lives to 78, but the average first responder or veteran lives to 58?
Because they don't deal with it. They don't deal with their stress. They don't learn to.
Yeah.
My husband was a police officer for 28 years and left angry. And I have no doubt he had PTSD. And for 10 years, he was angry. And I think partners are very important to bring that out, like Adam, like your partner did. Me, I'd always had outside influences, but I think me going through what I went through helped him. And he had a heart attack at 43 years old. So when you talk of the stress that they carry without the release valve, right? The pressure cooker, you have that release valve. Well, when you're in the fields, like Glenn, you don't talk about it. And same with you, Garrett. You don't talk about it. And same with us. We can't go home and share our stories. He couldn't. I was a spouse for 10 years before I joined the force. So I didn't see, and spouses carry that. Spouses carry that. But it was in what I was doing. And when I saw different things in him, then what my treatment did help me say, okay, we're going to go and do something different today. And he just turned 77. So we're doing something right.
Yeah, I agree with Janet, and we've had the conversation before. And it's absolutely true. The guys bottle it up. That's what we're taught as kids. I'm a guy. I got this. I don't need help. I don't need anybody. And guess what? That is absolutely incorrect. We all need something, and we need to talk about it. And I'm not talking about it. Officers and military veterans, especially those that haven't seen combat, see things that the normal mind and normal people can't even imagine and don't want to. And that stress builds and builds and builds, and there's no outlet. The military and law enforcement are just taught we don't talk about it. In fact, I remember going to the police academy. One of the things, they brought our spouses in, and they said, guys and gals, you're going to see things that you aren't going to be able to share. They're going to be too gruesome. You're going to see things that you can't talk about because it's ongoing investigation, but keep communication up with your spouse so you don't get divorced. And they started with the divorce rates really high. And we all walked out of there after 4 hours going, it took me 25 years and I came up with the and.
They don't give you tools.
Yeah.
They tell you things, but they don't give you the tools.
Yeah, absolutely. They don't. And that's one of the problems is there's no tools. There's no ways of coping with things. And the way most officers turn is alcohol, or, I don't know how many guys I've had a couple of friends who've committed suicide. I've had a couple of friends that have died young, unexpectedly, and it's because of eating this for so many years. And that's the big difference there, I think, in the lifespan.
And this is the question I've got. This is the question I've got, and this is to both men and women. Is when we are at our most vulnerable, or women at the most vulnerable, when women want to socialise and get some off the chest, they meet, whether it's for a cup of coffee or whether it's in the park, whatever. But when men want to talk about their feelings, pub straight away. Have to be the pub. They don't go for a cup of coffee or anything like that. Has to be the pub. Why is that?
That's a good question, because I look at it and I don't keep in touch with many officers that I worked with. I'm out of 26 years, maybe 3. Yeah. And I have to initiate the contact.
Right.
I always, every time, and my wife and I had this conversation a couple of weeks ago. If we want anything to happen, we're the ones that have to go out and initiate it, and that's not always what we want to do.
Exactly.
So I don't know if it's a guy thing, but I think it is. Yeah. Have big groups of guys, and they go play pool and they do their thing, and I actually restarted one now, and we go sit down and have a beer and smoke a cigar once a month. And there's about 6 or 7 of us, and so we just kind of talk and socialize in that. But I'm finding out again that if I don't initiate it, it's not happening.
Yeah. Well, like we talked about last week, I can go out with 8 or 10 of my guys, and we can go watch a football game or whatever, and I'll get home, and my wife will be like, "So what'd you guys talk about?" And we're like, "I don't know. So-and-so is getting through a divorce. Did you guys talk about it?" I don't know. I can tell you what happened in the game. I can tell you the score. But as far as what we talked about absolutely nothing.
Well, that's like with my husband. I'll say, "What are you thinking?" Nothing. What you went somewhere. But one thing I want to bring up, Glenn, you mentioned about your wife too. Having been a spouse first and then worked for the force, it's a little more of a unique thing. But for the longest time, and it's just recently done a shift in the last couple of years, it was me with my girlfriends and stuff like that. And then I had a lot of single girlfriends, and my husband was always the one who would go fix something for him and that. But in the last few years, we started meeting, I've met spouses with their husbands that want to, and we're starting to go out as couples again and enjoying time. But the strangest thing is that this one couple, her and I met in the spousal page. We just found out after years, last year, that our husbands were actually in the same troop.
Wow.
But it was a special troop. Like the RCMP was, you couldn't get married for the first 5 years in the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. And then in 1973, they decided that they'd bring in the married members and train them for 3 months and put them in the airports for security. Well, they found 2 years later that these guys were doing okay, so they could go back for another 3 months to train and then wear the red serge. So they had done all the academic stuff in the first 3 months, so the second 3 months are all physical stuff because they'd been policing for 2 years. But the thing was, they were different troops. So if you train with somebody for 6 months and you're there rooming and everything, you know each other inside and out. But these guys were married members. They'd go in for 3 months. They'd go back to their families, and we went to different provinces and stuff. So it was the second time in what they call the reversion crew, when they became regular members. And so that's why. And Bob is a B, and Les is a W. So they're bedmates or troop mates who they marched beside, who they slept beside, everything. So they didn't get to know all the letters. So they were in 2 different places. One was in front row, one back. So it's been really an enjoyable time for us as couples now. And I think that's what's missing. And we'll be married 53 years, which is not common in those things. But I think that, it's work, but it's also because when I joined, he saw a different world as well. And so did I.
See, that's a lot different than here in the U.S. We all went to the academy, but we were all from different departments, different cities, and we didn't stay at the academy. We went home at night. If we could, if they were from out of town, then they stayed at the academy. And then once we graduated, and after, man, I don't even remember now, 5 to 6 months or something, everybody went their own way, and we very rarely saw each other after that. And I know in the police department with couples things, I never saw that happen, other than Christmas and one of the big holidays. We'd get together, and usually that was by shift, not by, and the department would have a family gathering for Christmas and Easter and things like that. But it was like 2-3 times a year. And that's it. So, and I agree that the spouse has got to be included. And if they don't know what's going on, and they know what's going on, they know something is going on when you're going through PTSD. We think nothing's happening, but we change.
And I agree, because like even my wife, she'll be like, "Listen, dumbass, you need to get to a meeting. You're acting stupid." And she'll be like, "All right, you're going to the meeting, right?"
Yeah.
You're going to the meeting, right?
Yes.
So it's good to have that person that can call you on your bullshit and say, "All right, you're acting stupid. You need to go to a meeting, or you need to go to therapy or something like that." Sometimes we need that person that's not only going to hug us at night, but also is going to kick her ass out the door to go get some help.
Yeah, I my first time I went to therapy, I set it up on my own outside the department because I didn't want anybody to know, because they would have used that against me.
Yeah.
And so I just went out and took care of it myself when I finally realized that I was having some problems. But it took me a lot of years to realize I was having some problems.
And that's exactly the problem I had, because obviously I went 92 days sober, but that was on willpower. And if I didn't ring AA when I did, even they said over the phone, "If you did not make this phone call tonight, you'd be drinking today."
Yeah.
Because willpower runs out.
Yeah. I've gone through to AA meetings with a family member, a couple, and over the years.
They're really good, these meetings. Really good.
Powerful. Yes. Powerful.
Yeah. Yeah, I've been going 8 weeks now. So yeah.
And right, well, down to obviously like the support system. I know we're over time, but it boils down to the support system. Like, so my husband was never in the military. We have a son that's in the military, but even things that I notice as a spouse, and it's paying attention to the cues of, you seem a little off today. You seem really overwhelmed. Or when you can look at them and you can see just the stress in their face. And it's recognizing that, calling it out. And sometimes it might even be where you as a wife, women that are listening, but you as a wife may need to reach out to one of their friends and say, "Hey, can you check on XYZ just to see, if they open up to you and talk to you about what's going on, because maybe they don't want to burden us as their spouse with what they're going through, or, whatever." But it's keeping those lines of communication, like you said, Glenn, open all the time, and being aware and knowing that you can be vulnerable with your spouse. If you don't feel that safety or that ability to be vulnerable with them, then maybe there's some evaluation that needs to happen. But in the end, that's the person that you're supposed to be able to be your most vulnerable with. that you feel safe with them, that they can see you're ugly and still be there to support you and to pick you back up and know, like, hey, I still love you. What are we going to do moving forward to continue getting you through this? So that's huge, is having the support system.
Huge. And then making yourself vulnerable is huge, because most guys especially see that as a weakness, and it is not.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, I think we should wrap up. Glenn, would you like to come back next week? Because obviously the time difference was messed up. We're discussing embracing the challenge to reach the highest level.
Yeah, I would love to come back, and I'm grabbing my calendar.
Right, what time is it now where you are?
It is now a little after 2 o'clock, 2:15.
Right, so
right,
so I'm 7 hours ahead of you.
So you're same time zone as me, Glenn.
Okay, so it'd be
it'd be 1 o'clock your time. 1 o'clock.
And that's
not 2, 1.
That's on next Friday, the 7th.
Yes.
Okay, I'm penciling you in 1 o'clock.
Yeah, it's 1 o'clock, not 2.
I am not here next week.
No, you're not. No, you're skiving.
I'm traveling, and it's my anniversary next week.
Oh, is it?
It is.
How does he cope?
Anniversary. Really? Because I'm amazing.
No, everyone's amazing. They really are. No, I was just kicked out because my almost 10-month-old decided he's going to try and video call me on WhatsApp. Yeah. Well, over the next week, I'm going to try and get the laptop fixed because I'm sick of being robotic and getting bullied by Ashly.
I love you, Adam.
See, there you go. There you go. She's quiet.
Well,
I'm going to wrap up and yeah. Right, that's it.
But with kids, yeah, you got to laugh.
You have to. You have to. I've got 3 of them at home.
Thanks, Adam.
Yeah.
I appreciate
You're
being
welcome.
here. And it was nice to see Glenn and Nance.
Yeah, well, you're welcome back anytime. You're welcome back anytime. Any of you are.